Just go read some stuff off to you. Georgia last season scored 40.1 points per game. That was 5th in the country. They averaged 7.1 yards per play. That was 4th in the country. They had 0.57 points per play last year. That was 6th in the country. They converted 55.56% of their third downs last year. That was number 1 in the country. However, listen to this. One stat above all others highlights this. In 2023, Georgia converted 89.71% of red zone opportunities per teamrankings.com. That's good for 23rd in the nation. It was a major drop-off in from 2022's 98.67%, which was first among Power 5 schools. The problem wasn't moving the football. Georgia got to the red zone more times per game, 5.2, than any other team in the country. It was the lack of finishing when they got there. Even more damning was Georgia's final 3 games. The Georgia Bulldogs scored on just 72.73% of red zone trips in those matchups. So it got worse as the season progressed, their inability to score in the red zone. When you're in the top 5, which they were pretty much in the top 5 of every offensive statistical category across the board. Is that correct, Jay Will? Mm-hmm. Top 5, just hands down, top 5 offense last year. Except for the red zone, they were a top 25 team. That's a pretty sizable drop-off from every other category that you're great at.
The only thing that I would say about this is in 2021, Georgia finished 50th in red zone conversion.
I was going to say, they had pretty historic defense that year too.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So, I'm not saying that you can. It's a recipe for winning. Not converting the red zone can be withheld. I'm saying in 2021, you went Todd Monken corrected that number, and a large part of that probably was because Stetson Bennett had played a full season at that point going into 2022, and they had a lot of key returning pieces. I think you can say the same thing for this year's offense. Of Carson Beck just went through an entire season of starting. Now he's going into another year of starting. You might see a similar jump from those numbers that you did from 2021 to 2022.
I'm gonna do this. I don't do this often. I sidetrack quite often. Seeing comments about Georgia's speeding issues. Okay, all this stuff. Y'all are arguing about all this shit. I came on here last week with all the speeding issues. UNC had a student die and 3 football players involved in an over 120 mile an hour crash. A Florida football player got arrested for driving 150 miles an hour on the interstate with his lights turned off. An Alabama football player went over 120 miles an hour being chased by the police with over an ounce of marijuana in the car. Georgia football player died in an accident where people were driving over 100 miles an hour at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's everywhere. So y'all can throw stones about which program's worse or whatever. There are kids driving at high rates of speeds in really, really fast cars right now, and they shouldn't be. Point. End of point. Done. Continue. Go ahead.
No, yeah, just to kind of recap what I was saying is 2021 to 2022, I think the big difference was Stetson Bennett started a full season, had that going into 2022. You returned a lot of your key offensive players. Todd Monken got another year at Georgia. You saw a major jump from red zone. Again, you went from 50th in the country to 1st in the country from 2021 to 2022. This year, you're top 25. Not great. You were not a top 5 red zone offense like you probably should have been with the number of attempts that you had. But again, Carson Beck, full season starting this last year, coming back again. A lot of key returning pieces. Mike Bobo has another season as well coming into this year.
Any thoughts on this stat? Because my next question is, how do you improve on this? And I have some thoughts, but any thoughts on the general stat?
I think obviously it's a bad look when you progressively get worse in the red zone as the season goes on. There's a multitude of things you can contribute that to. I think the fact that you didn't really have Brock Bowers available for the large part of that back half of the season probably adds to that. Ladd McConkey was also banged up as well. So your offensive production, or the bell cows of your offensive production throughout that season, weren't necessarily there. But it's not a great statistic. It's also not one where I go, ooh, that's bad. It was also you played some really tough games toward that back. You played Tennessee on the road. You played Tech on the road, which gave you a tough matchup than you were hoping for, but still a very tough game. And then you played Alabama, one of the teams that made the playoff last year. So you have to imagine production dips off at some point.
All right, so that brings us to our next discussion, right, which is how do they improve when they're down in the red zone? First and foremost, great teams run the ball into the end zone. That's number one. That's football 101. You want to be great in the red zone? Be able to run the ball into the end zone, period, point blank. Be able to run the ball when the box gets small. That's an important part. The other thing about this is that you mentioned Brock going out last year, and even when Brock's healthy, when Brock was healthy, who was Georgia's number one red zone threat? A tight end, particularly in the middle of the field, where double coverage can oftentimes get brought. What Georgia hasn't had in a couple of years is a healthy X receiver that can go up and really dominate in the red zone and one-on-one opportunities. I think Colby Young's addition to this roster could really increase. I'm not going to say it's going to drastically change. You're not going to go from 23rd in the country to back to the first in the country in terms of red zone efficiency. However, I think things get made much easier when I can just say downset hut, chuck it up to the 6'5" guy that's going to go win a one-on-one.
Or to add to that, a running back that can dominate between the tackles.
Yeah.
So I looked it up. Last year, Georgia averaged 2.98 yards per carry in the red zone, which was 51st in the country.
Yeah, that's your main problem. You want to get better at scoring in the red zone. Be better at running the football. This offensive line that we all talk about, okay, myself really included, get your ass better in the red zone, period. When they got more people than you, be able to push them into the end zone and let's score some daggone points. So yeah, that's the way to go about improving there. What are some other areas of growth for this Georgia offense? Do you have any? I have one right off the top of my head that I know that they got to get better at, and it's across the board. They have got to get better at making the first free defender miss.
Yes.
Wide receivers, running backs, especially running backs. Okay, Kendall Milton had some great long stretch runs last year. Everyone remembers them, but tell me when was the last time you saw a Georgia running back make a safety miss and then take it 60? Because I can't off the top of my head remember when was the last time a Georgia ball carrier made somebody miss or broke a tackle and then took it to the house. And my brain and your brains, like we found out last night, does this constantly where, oh, that one, boom, right into my head. I can't see it. I don't see it. I haven't seen a Georgia ball carrier make the first defender freely miss on a routinely basis in a while.
Yeah, I can only think of
Swift.
I can only think of times where they came close and they got chased down. Like those are the only scenarios that I could really think of. I couldn't tell you of the last time they had like a breaker.
The first one that pops in my head, and I don't know if this is the most recent, but if it is, that's not a good look, is the Peach Bowl against Ohio State where Kenny McIntosh gets a wide open hole, cuts all against the safety, and they trips right before he gets in the end zone. That's where one. That's
a backside cut off standard inside zone.
Correct.
Like that's available often. So yeah, I mean the Kenny Mack, the DeAndre Swifts of the world.
I think the most recent one, and this is really bad if it is the most recent one, it's Zeus's touchdown against Florida to open the game in 2020.
Yep, jump cut outside, took it 80.
Yeah. That's the last big breaker touchdown I can remember.
Pretty obvious sign of improvement needed.
Yeah.
Right there for Georgia. Do we have any other ones offensively? And look, don't do the deep ball accuracy. We all know that. Everyone and their mama knows they got to get better at throwing the deep ball. Any other ones?
This isn't really a statistical or something you can measure statistically, but make your layups. There were a lot of times last year where, not to do it, but the deep ball, maybe Carson Beck overthrew it, or he threw a good pass and it was dropped. Like things like that you can't have, or just drops in general or missed assignments. Like you can't really have that if you want to be an elite offense. Just make your layups. Like Kirby Smart talks about that all the time. If you have a wide open play that should go for 60 yards, make it go for 60 yards.
I think that, and this could really help too with the red zone conversions, is that when Georgia gets into that 35-yard line on their own field to the opponent's other 35-yard line, like get better in that range of getting the ball, pushing the ball. Not again, like this isn't even just hitting your deep shots, but like help yourself out a little bit by because I felt like there were so many times last year where Georgia got into that range and the field felt like it was shrinking for them and things were becoming like a lot more cluttered for them and things didn't feel as smooth into that range. But then when they got past that, things kind of even out. Like get deeper into the field quicker.
You want to be better in the red zone, be better in the green zone.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to get better scoring from the 20, don't get in there. Score from the 35.
Yeah.
That's something that Georgia has had a problem with in the last handful of years. It's just, though their yards per play metrics are great, their amount of chunk plays is not, right? They're doing a great job of ripping off 7, 12, 18-yard gains. You got to have more. We just scored. Here's the ball back. Got to have more of that moving forward. So I'm with you. Any other areas of improvement?
Nothing I could think.
They haven't been turnover prone the last several years.
Yeah,
so
no stupid penalties or anything.
Yeah, they don't get any of those.
Right.
The operation's smooth at this point.
Yeah. Play calling's fine.
Play calling seems good.
Third down is like almost always manageable.
Yeah. That's it.
I mean, it's really nitpicking when you
really are.
Yeah.
You're really, really nitpicking this roster, particularly on the offensive side of the football at this point. All right.